What's good, everybody? My name's Mr. Peters. In today's video, we're going to review solving two-step equations with fractions. And before we get started, guys, this video is going to help make that process easier. And I'm going to show you guys how exactly to solve two-step equations with fractions. So the very first thing we need to understand and know is, what are we solving for? So I highlighted my x. We're solving for x, and we're going to solve using two steps like I said before. And what we need to know is that in step one, we're either going to add or subtract. And then in our second step, more than likely, we're going to divide or multiply. That's typically how the two-step equations work. So before I get started, I'm going to actually rewrite this equation because I like my x to be on the left-hand side of the equation. The best thing is it's not going to change our answer whether you solve it like this or you rewrite it. But it's important that once you rewrite it, that you have the correct signs with the correct numbers. All right, so we rewrote the equation, right? You don't have to do this if you don't want to. And now we want to solve for x. And the very first step we have to understand is we need to get x by itself, the variable by itself on one side of the equation. And for us to do that in this problem, we're going to have to move -1. Now, to move -1, we have to add it to itself. So we're going to add it to itself to cancel it out. And then remember that what we do on one side of the equation, we have to make sure that we do it to the other side, right? On the other side of the equal sign. So now I'm going to go on the other side of the equal sign. I'm going to add 1 like I did. And now I like to do, I like to add things vertically. It's easier to see. So once we do that now, we're going to go straight. We're going to bring 4 over 5x straight down because there's nothing to combine with it. So we have 4 over 5x, right? Remember, this cancels out to 0, is equal to 12 now. And just remember at this step, guys, there's two ways that we could try to solve this equation with this fraction, okay? So let's rewrite it and then we'll work on how to actually solve. So we have 4 over 5x is equal to 12. And remember, guys, when we're dividing by an entire fraction, what we want to do is turn it into a multiplication problem and take the reciprocal. So all that means is, instead of dividing by 4 over 5, we're going to multiply 4 over 5 by its reciprocal. And all its reciprocal is saying is, hey, top number comes to the bottom, bottom number comes to the top. So the reciprocal of 4 over 5 is just 5 over 4. And if you understand this now, right, what we could do right here is cross multiply. So we could cancel out our 5s, cancel out our 4s, because even if we multiplied straight across, we would get 20 over 20x. And once we reduce the fraction, right, that would just be 1x, which is the same thing as just x. All right, so I hope you guys understand what I mean by that, okay? So let's go back and just erase this. So after we multiply by the reciprocal, we're left with just our x. So now x is equal to 12. And before we think that's the final answer, what we do on one side of the equation, guys, we have to make sure we go on the other side of the equal sign and do the same thing. So what I'm going to do is put our multiplication sign here and put 5 over 4. And just so that we won't get confused, remember, we're going to put 12 over 1 and make it a fraction as well, okay? 12 over 1 is the same thing as 12. So now we're going to go ahead, multiply straight across, and this should give us 60 over 4. And once we simplify this fraction, we could say that x is equal to 15. All right? So this is when we divide by the entire fraction. Another method that I really like to use, and I think is actually easier, is to get rid of the fraction. So we're going to switch in the whole entire color now so this sticks out. So when we're at this step right here, right, we have 4 over 5x is equal to 12. What I like to do is to get rid of the fraction altogether. So when we want to get rid of the fraction, we always multiply the fraction by its denominator, that bottom number. So what that means is I'm going to multiply by 5, and we could put it over 1, 2, right? We're going to cancel out, cross cancel, and what we're left with is just 4x on this side, okay? And this is equal to, and just remember, guys, we have to make sure that we do the same step on both sides. So after I multiplied 12 by 5, I'm going to get the answer of 4x is equal to 60. And once we take this last step and we divide by 4, we will get the same answer of x is equal to 15. All right, so two different ways to solve that problem right there. In our second example, what happens now is the whole entire problem is a fraction. So in our second problem, we have this right here. Let's write this on out. Oops, I made a mistake. Let's erase that. So 3 over 4. All right. So we're on the second problem now, guys. And just remember, when we're talking about adding and subtracting fractions, guys, we cannot do that unless the denominator is the same. And what I'm going to do right here in this problem is I'm going to try to get all those denominators to be the same, and then I'm going to solve. So if I look at these three numbers, I know they all share a common multiple of 8, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the entire fraction so they all have the same denominator. So in our first example, right, to get 4 to become 8, we're going to have to multiply 4 by 2. And remember, when we're changing the denominator or we're making equivalent fractions, right, we have to multiply both the top and bottom by the same number. So since I'm multiplying the denominator by 2, I'm going to multiply my numerator by 2 as well. So 3 over 4 turns into 6 over 8. And then 1/2, if, 1/2 of 8 is just 4, right? So if we want to change that denominator, we multiply by 4. And now our new equation is going to look something like this. So we changed our denominator so that all the fractions had the same denominator. Now let's see if we could go through and solve. So remember, we're trying to solve for n. And please don't forget that that negative sign, that subtraction sign in front of the fraction 4 over 8n means that that fraction is negative. So we cannot forget that. So now what we're going to do is we want to make sure that we get the variable by itself. So for me to do that, we are going to subtract 6 over 8 from itself. So we subtract 6 over 8 from itself, and I'm going to go on the other side and I'm going to do the same thing, right? And I'm only writing it side by side just so you guys can see it better, okay? So now we cancel out 6 over 8. So we're going to bring down the fraction on the left side. So we have negative 4n over 8 is equal to, and when we're subtracting or adding fractions, what we do is only combine the numerators. The denominator is going to stay the same. So we could just write the denominator, and 5 minus 6 is going to give us a negative 1. All right? So now with this step, we're kind of back where we were with the first problem, right? Variables on one side, our numbers with no variables on the opposite side, right? Now, two ways to solve. This time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide by the entire fraction, all right? So when I want to divide by the entire fraction, that means I'm actually going to multiply. So let's slide down a little bit more and let's actually rewrite this. So I have 8 over 4, right? That's negative, times negative 4n over 8. This cancels out, right? All we're left with is positive n, okay? So now positive n is equal to, and then we'll go on the other side and make sure we do the same thing. Negative 1 over 8 multiplied by negative 8 over 4. And what happens here, guys, is after we cross cancel, we cancel out those 8s, we're going to be left with n is equal to 1 over 4. So when you're solving two-step equations, guys, please just remember these golden rules, these very helpful tips. First step, we're more than likely going to subtract or add. And in our second step, we're going to divide or multiply. If you found this video to be helpful, we're going to ask that you smash the like button for us. Give us a few comments on give us a few comments on a few things you found helpful. And we ask that you join us in our next video when we talk more about fractions and how to solve equations. Thank you.